Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Brennan. If you are new here, I am a strong woman in the UK. Recently I've done a load of silly videos because there's not much else to do in lockdown, but I also want this channel to be a place where people can learn and educate themselves about strength sports and all the things that go with that. This video today is a kind of chat, I guess, with my nutrition coach Vicky Mirceta, aka the Tiny Titan, where we talk all things nutrition and strength sports. So we cover common mistakes that strength athletes make, nutrition timings, and we talk about how carbs are not the devil. Stay tuned and I hope you learn something useful. Hello Vicky.
Hi
Chloe. How are you?
I'm alright, my darling, how are you?
I am good, thank you. So for everyone who doesn't know, Vicky is my lovely nutrition coach. I started working with her Feb time, just before the Arnold.
Yeah, just about that.
Yeah, and have been with her since, and I'm doing really well with her. So Vicky, please can you tell us a bit about what you do, who you are, all of those things?
All of those things involved all in one thing. Okay, so I am Vicky Mirceta, aka the Tiny Titan. Do you know what? I always get pissed off when people say aka because it's just like, what the fuck does that mean? Sorry, can I swear on this thing? I'm just like,
Yeah.
Terrible. Anyway,
children, but
yes, I know. If you have children, please ask them to leave the room. I'm not vulgar. I just kind of get really passionate, and when I get passionate, I swear. I am Vicky Mirceta. I am a fully qualified, which base I hate using the terminology fully qualified, but I have to use it because in our realms of fitness and nutrition, nutritionist is not a protected term. Only the term dietitian is. So anybody can call themselves a nutritionist. However, I have done all of the bump, the degrees, the masters, the diplomas, and everything else. So I am going to call myself a fully qualified nutritionist. It's specifying in sports performance, mostly concentrating on the strength sports because that is just my passion. So strongman, strongwoman, powerlifting, Olympic lifting, and then I dabble in some endurance sports. So I've got some cyclists, some Ironmen, triathletes, that kind of thing. And of course, all of the bodybuilders, because if you lift heavy shit, you can look good doing it too. So that's about me in terms of like my personal stuff or my professional stuff even. I am also a fully registered and practicing adult nurse with specialties in orthopedic surgery and GI disorders. So I only practice 2 days a month now, realistically, just to keep my registration because my business is sports performance nutrition. And I go in on bank, so I've done quite a few extra shifts, as you can imagine, over the last few months. And that has not been in orthopedic surgery.
It's wherever they want to put you.
Yeah, that was quite scary. It was like, holy shit, I haven't been on a ward since a student day. But yeah, that was very, very interesting. But yeah, I do still enjoy very much so orthopedic surgery, and of course GI disorders has a really nice crossover into nutritional practices. So that's about me in a nutshell. I work from home. I'm fully online. I don't do any one-to-one coaching techniques or anything like that at this moment in time. I do sometimes obviously travel to see my clients, and I will always be with them on their competition day, apart from myself because you couldn't afford to take me with you.
I can only just afford to get myself there.
Exactly, yeah. But yeah, so it's just a really big passion of mine that I like to see my athletes do very, very well. And you were in a little bit of a stupor as well, weren't you, when you came to me, because you were like, oh, my weight's not coming down and I'm really annoyed about it.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why we hooked up, realistically, wasn't it?
It is. And I mean, it was originally because I needed to drop some weight to compete, but since then it's become so much more than that. But before we move on to that, you also have experience as a strength athlete because you are a strength athlete. So tell us a little bit about what you do as a competitor as well.
What I love doing. So I like picking up heavy stuff and putting it back down. I'm not a strong woman, but I am a strong woman. I'm a power lifter. Now I do not compete as a 3-lift lifter. I squat and deadlift for the shits and giggles because I love it. But I don't compete as a 3-lift lifter. I am a bench only power lifter, international. So I am Commonwealth silver medalist for last year now. Yes, last year. I'm getting my months mixed up because the years just run into one. And current British champion for the under 52 kilo category for the bench press. So that's what I do in that one. I'm also a hybrid athlete in the fact that I am British champion in terms of bodybuilding for a few years ago, athletic champion in the Ultimate Athlete, which was the BMBF back in 2018. That was a bit of a crazy kind of challenge. That was just like, I didn't want to compete as a bodybuilder and I didn't want to compete as a powerlifter that year, or I didn't have any competitions coming up. As powerlifters, we can compete, you know, quite frequently, realistically. I kind of stay circa my weight anyway, so the heaviest I get up to is about 54 kilos, because after that, I know, I'm diddy. But I mean, anything heavier than that, I tend to feel really sluggish, and it does affect my performance a hell of a lot. So I tend to stay around 54 kilos, and being a very small, natty individual, it would be kind of stupid to, you know, get up to like 60 kilos or anything like that in my off seasons. Even to grow lean muscle tissue, you just don't need to get that fat. And that's all it would be. I would just be fat at 60 kilos. So yeah, the Ultimate Athlete was a bit of a weird one because I had to do powerlifting for reps, and then I had to do like this circuit, a bit of a HIIT circuit, a bit like CrossFit, so pull-ups and burpees and shuttle sprints and shit like that. That was weird. And then of course the following day, then I had to stand on stage and look pretty. So it was the strength of a powerlifter, the speed of a CrossFitter, and then the aesthetics of a bodybuilder. So I became British champion in that one in 2018. No, sorry, 2017, my apologies. And then what is it? Oh, and this, do you want me to talk about the challenge thing now?
Should we put it in at the end and then
Let's put it in the end. Let's put it in the end.
Talk a bit about it. It's very cool.
Okay.
So keep watching and you'll get to find out all about Vicky's super cool, amazing challenge.
It's like a stupid challenge, completely stupid.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. Okay, so a lot of people have asked, or always ask, about my nutrition. One of the reasons I focus so much on my nutrition is because I am also a natural athlete, which is something I get questioned on a lot. But yeah, so as I said, my nutrition journey with Vicky started with me just dropping weight, but now it is more than that and we have different goals. So Vicky, do you want to talk a bit about what you are doing to me at the moment?
What I am doing to you, that sounds horrendous. Well, I'm plying you with all of the food. That's basically about it. To stop overcomplicating things, right? Because a lot of people do think that nutrition is complicated, and I really do want to make it sound that there are certain elements of nutrition that's very complicated, but nutrition does not have to be complicated. And I think people really do overthink it a hell of a lot. Now, when it comes to competition and when it comes to athleticism and when it comes to really peaking strength and things like that, whilst manipulating weight, then yeah, okay, there are certain things that we do have to manage a little bit more closely. But when it comes to like your general everyday nutrition, it's not hard. It really isn't. When it came to you making weight, you did decide to throw a spanner in the works by pissing your back up the wall. So I kind of had to do this like, oh shit, right, let's change everything around. And unfortunately, I've had two clients who have done the same thing very recently, not in terms of their back, but I had one just like shatter their arm, and another one who tore their hamstring. So same kind of thing. We had to really change their nutritional strategy to make sure that we are really boosting up their recovery process. And that's exactly what we had to do with you for about a 2-week period. So it wasn't just about creating a deficit for you to make weight easily, but it was also about making sure you didn't get injured any further and rehabbing what you were doing without losing any strength or muscle tissue, but still, of course, not putting your weight up. So it was a bit of a juggle on that side, but we managed to get through it quite well. Now, when you made weight, it was relatively fairly simple. The only thing that we had to manipulate that I don't really like doing, but for you it was different, you got 24-hour weigh-in, is water manipulation. Now, with your water manipulation, the only reason why we did that was because of the flight. It was so long, you were going to be withholding quite a lot or retaining, quite a lot of water. So that's the reason why we brought on a water manipulation, but you still had a shitload of food, still had loads of carbs, didn't really take a lot of food off you realistically.
And with the water manipulation as well, I wasn't one of those who had to kind of cut and not have anything and then sit in a sauna. It just wasn't like that at all. It was a very comfortable experience.
Yeah, it was more of a load, realistically, because we didn't cut any water. It was more of a load. So again, two different things. Water cutting and water loading are two different things. So again, these are the more complicated bits. But anyway, you made weight, you were happy, you didn't have to dehydrate, sweat or anything like that, and you had all of the foods afterwards. So that was all good. Performance-wise, in terms of your actual game day, you specifically had a plan from 7 a.m. all the way through until after your competitions, didn't you? And it was step by step. And I was very, very anal at the fact about like, right, this is the shop that you are going to, this is the thing that you are going to buy. And people might really have a go at me for that and say, Jesus Christ, that's anal. But the thing is that I don't want my athletes to think about anything. It's just like, right, just go to the end of your road. That is your shop. That is your shopping list.
And how exciting was it when I actually found that gel that we needed? I looked around all day to try and find it.
But you see, that was the pivotal. That was the thing. And you did really bloody well. And it was awesome. So anyway, coming back from the Arnolds, at that point then, it was all about regaining some good lean muscle tissue without you being an arsehole and without you putting on a lot of body fat, because that's going to be entirely detrimental. So cutting a long story short, at the moment, what we're looking to do is we're looking to create some physiological adaptations with yourself, which you have seen. Mm-hmm. So I am slowly pushing food on you, sometimes in big leaps, but sometimes in just little bits. But I'm not putting you into a deficit. I'm not putting you into a maintenance phase. You are continuously in a surplus until your body adapts to that surplus, and then we can push a little bit more from that. The timing of your meals are extremely important as well. So we have got that nailed. We did have to play around a little bit because, again, I'm a bit of a stickler for it in terms of post-workout nutrition, because you don't want too many carbohydrates of the same source going through your gut, because it causes a lot of GI distress. You do see a lot of people and they pack away like 300-400 grams of carbohydrates straight after a training session, and it's like, Jesus Christ, why? And it's realistically all of the same source, so it's all going to be glucose or it's all going to be dextrose. And the thing is that all of the science and all of the tests that have gone on, well, not just recently, but obviously throughout the years and the decades, the most amount that the norm, I'm going to say, I'm not going to talk about the outliers, but the normal everyday athlete can absorb is 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour. Now, that's comfortable, and it's only going to be 60 grams worth of glucose or dextrose and 30 grams worth of fructose. Yeah. So if you combine the two, you'll be able to actually uptake that without causing any kind of GI distress. So we were, again, pushing the limits with yourself, weren't we? We're like, let's just try this and let's just try that. Let's put a little bit more in. And I asked you to keep in touch with me quite vividly at that point, didn't we? Because I didn't want you suffering any kind of GI distress or bloating, which you didn't, which was very good. So yeah, that's basically what we are planning with yourself. We don't want your weight to go ridiculously high, because the next time you need to cut, it's just going to make it even worse for yourself. And in terms of aerobic capacity and in terms of strength adaptations as well, strength adaptations is 99% neural anyway, but you still have to be able to lift the weight that you are going to be exposed to, and continuously to progressively overload that. Now, if you are a big fat person who cannot have that amount of body fat on you, then all you're going to be doing is getting in the way of getting stronger. Your leverages are going to be changed. If it's, say, for example, if I was 75 kilos, the majority, or about at least 20 kilos of that is going to be body fat. Now, if I wanted to pick up a deadlift, I would find it really difficult to get into the bottom portion of the deadlift to start the movement. Yeah. And if I wanted to get into a squat as a female, we carry a lot of fat around our hips and around our backsides and thighs and things like that. So in order to reach depth, you may not actually reach past parallel because you've just got too much mass. Mm-hmm. Even if your thigh touches your calf, you may not actually break parallel. And if that's the case, then you're going to red light. Yeah. So that's the point about you. We are pushing the boundaries in terms of how much weight we can put on. And you're about, what, 1.5 kilos, 2 kilos over at the moment?
Yeah, about 2 kilos.
Yeah, about 2 kilos over your competing weight, but your strength is much more, your aerobic capacity is more, you're eating a shit ton of food, you have untrackable days as well. The reason why I put untracked days in there for Chloe is a lot of mental stress can obviously come up throughout the week, and you just want to have that one day off from being an athlete. You want to be a normal human being, and athletes are great, they really, really are, but it just gives you that little bit of flexibility. So when it does come to competing and I say to you, right, we're now 6 weeks out, you're not going to have that untracked meal. You can still have what you want, but you're going to track it. And you know then that you can just switch that mentality, because you know I'm going to bring it back in when you're not going to be competing.
And that's something that I put some question thing out on Instagram, and quite a few people have asked, how do you manage cravings and such? And the truth is I don't really have cravings for that reason. I track flexibly. So most of my meals are nutrient dense meals that are going to fuel my performance. But if I want to have a little chocolate bar, or I want to have a biscuit, or I want to have a nice big sandwich, then I can, and it's not going to mess anything up. It's still there. And that non-tracking day also allows for that. And I think it's really important because food is fuel for athletes, but food is so much more than that. It's a social thing. It's something that we are supposed to enjoy. And if we take those things out of it and are just so strict all the time, you're going to end up hating it, and you're not going to want to eat. So I think it's really important to keep that enjoyment element to it. And I think that's something that we've kind of hit really well with those non-tracking days and that flexible approach as well.
Definitely. I mean, don't get me wrong, it doesn't work for everybody. Sometimes people just kind of like look at the flexibility element, and I'm like, okay, this is what you're going to do. And they just kind of turn around to me and go, no, no, I just want a meal plan. Just tell me what to eat, you know? And I find it more so with men than I do with women. So the majority of my strongmen are on meal plans.
Interesting.
It is. And I think it's realistic. It's funny because the majority of the strongmen are on meal plans, but then they kind of say, is it okay if my missus cooks me a meal one day? It's just like, yeah, that's why you're going to have one day off track. But the majority of the strongmen that I have are on so higher calories, they can realistically eat what they want or what their missus cooks for them on the Sundays or whatever day they're going to have together. And they're never, ever going to put themselves in a massive surplus. Unless they eat, like, you know, I don't know, 4 double cheesecakes or something like that afterwards. But the majority of them don't.
I love cheesecake.
I know, they're not bad.
There's a new thing. There's a company called Please Cakes, and they've started doing things called freeze cakes. So it's frozen cheesecake in a tub. So I'm going to look out for that, just to make you aware. I don't know if it's gluten-free. You have to have a look.
Oh, you see? Bastards. Yeah, that's another thing about me. I am a true celiac, which really pisses me off.
Yeah, but I don't think I could deal with that.
It's so unfair.
Okay, then. So you just mentioned you have a few strong men, and you also have a growing army of strong women. You have a lot of us now. So what is your favourite thing about programming for strongman the sport and strong women specifically, if there is a difference?
Oh yeah, totally. Massive difference. The reason being, or the reason why I love, I'm actually sticking to my leather seat here. It's really horrible.
I'm very
but you know, I'm very honest as well. The reason why I love programming strong men and women so much is because they are realistically a hybrid athlete. They have got to be bloody good at everything. You know, they have to have aerobic capacity. They've got to have endurance. They've got to have strength. They've got to be able to have that strength and actually perform it for reps. You know, I mean, at the Giants Live, I had 2 guys and they needed to rep 400 kilo deadlifts for reps. And it's like, what? You know, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, it's madness. I mean, these guys are like, you know, 150 to 170 kilos. So they're big, huge, massive guys, and they have to rep 400 kilo deadlifts. Now that involves strength, it involves aerobic capacity, it involves endurance, and not just endurance in terms of, you know, breathing capacity, like people think about endurance like being a runner, but it's not. You know, you have to have that endurance capability in order to breathe, but you also have to have muscular cardiovascular endurance as well, because you know yourself, if you do any more than like 8 deadlifts at a certain weight, your hamstrings are going to go, your back's going to start to seep up, all of the hydrogen's going to start to, you know, that lactate that people describe with your muscle, that's hydrogen. So all of that starts to build up, and you can offset that so much with nutrition as long as you get it really all of your ducks lined up in a row. And as long as you are looking at the performance that you're doing, so I don't program the actual programs, the strength programs for strong men and women. I don't do that. I leave that to the professionals. Not that I'm not a professional, but I just, no, you do all of that. I'll just fuel you for it. So I look at your program that you do in big detail. I'll have a look at the blocks that you're going to do. Is it going to be more endurance based? Is it going to be more aerobic based? Is it going to be a bit of everything, you know, that you absolutely hate? Are you going to build up more hydrogen and lactate that you're going to need to recover from? Are you going to be doing a longer run one day, you know, or is the next day going to be sprints? All of these things need to be periodized. And the thing is that you need to be able to fuel the work required. So if you're only doing some banded yoga stuff, for example, you're not going to warrant 500 grams of carb that day.
No.
You know, you're just not. Because it's more recovery, it's more activity, it's more like an active rest day type stuff. But if you're going to be doing cleans, snatches, jerks, deadlifts, sprints, burpees, and then those wonderful prone swimmer things that you do.
Thanks, Jenny.
I know. Then you're going to need more food. You know, you're going to need more fuel for it. We also have to look at your digestibility actions of that, because again, everybody is different. Everybody digests something in a different way. You metabolize things in a different way. Some people can work better on fat as a fuel efficiency. Other people work better on carbohydrates as a fuel efficiency. Again, it comes down to your individual genetics as well, your history, your hereditary markers. There's so much that needs to be involved in that kind of thing. But realistically, yeah, that's the reason why I love it so much, because it is a little bit more detailed. You know, I'm a geek. I have to admit it. I am a geek. So that's the reason why I love it so much, because you have to be the ultimate athlete in a way. You've got to cover everything. And if you don't cover everything in terms of your nutrition, then you're not going to be ultimate.
Yeah.
You're just average. Do you know what I mean?
We don't want average.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. So some of the questions that my lovely followers gave to me include, I like this one, especially for, I think, people in weight classes, but also now I think some of the real big guys and girls are starting to cut down their weight because they're realizing that a lot of the weight they're carrying isn't functional. Mm-hmm. So the question that was asked was, how much does being in a calorie deficit impact on strength performance?
Oh, that's a good one. Everybody thinks that the minute you go into a deficit, you are going to lose strength. If you take a strong man who is packing away 5,000 calories a day and you put him onto 1,300 calories a day in order to make weight, cut weight, act better, perform better, whatever like that, guess what? Your strength is going to be fucked. There is certain ways in which you need to create a deficit. Being in a deficit will not affect your strength gains. You can gain strength in a deficit. Reason being is, I mentioned it earlier, 90% of the strength gains that you are going to make is neurological. Yeah. You, of course, have to expose yourself to the stimulus. One of the biggest things that I see quite a lot in all aspects of strength sport, the minute you go into a deficit, you start to reduce the weight on the bar. Well, that's the most stupidest thing that I've ever seen happen. You know, I see bodybuilders do it. They get into their cut, they're 6 weeks out, and they're like, oh, I'm going to take squats and deadlifts out. It's like, why? You know, why do you want to do that? You know, you really do need to retain every single little bit of strength that you have. You might lose a kilo or two on the bar and stuff like that, but we're talking bodybuilders here who need to get into like sub 10% body fat and lower than that. So that's completely different for strength sports in terms of just making weight. If you put yourself into a deficit of, I mean, of course, it depends on how large a deficit is. I'm not just going to give figures out there, because a lot of people do say 3,500 calories per week equates to about a pound of fat. Again, that's kind of bullshit. If that did happen, and if that was the actual equation, okay, mathematically wise, yeah, all right, it's about energy derivatives. But if that was going to happen, then everybody would just be able to put themselves in a deficit of 3,500 calories a week, and everybody would lose weight linearly.
Yeah.
Linearly. And it doesn't happen like that, right? So as long as you put yourself into a sensible deficit and really eke out every single inch or millimeter or anything like that, that deficit can give you, and still put the weight on the bar, you're not going to lose strength. Put yourself into a more aggressive deficit, then yeah, you'll probably see some weaknesses in there. It's just, again, about not being an arsehole. And I know I say that quite a lot. You know, I say it on, like, when you do your non-tracker double days, you know, this is not an excuse to be an arsehole. Just don't be an arsehole, you know, and just think about it cleverly. But no, deficits, if they're done properly and done correctly and managed correctly, it will not affect your strength at all now.
Excellent. Next one. How should a nutrition plan change for a woman throughout her menstrual cycle? And this is something that people always ask me about, things around cycles. And for me, I don't know, because everyone thinks that all women have a cycle and a period. I take a contraceptive pill, Microgana, so I don't have a period, so I don't necessarily have the same fluctuations in like performance and cravings and all those things that other women might have. So Vicky obviously can answer a bit more, but that's kind of, I am not in a position personally to answer those questions when people do ask. So it'll be interesting to know a bit more.
So, okay, so let's have a look at the differences between men and women. Men have one hormone to worry about, which is testosterone. Okay, that's constant. I just basically call it a single cycle, which is a lifetime of being an arsehole. That's men. Right? In terms of, I stole that one from Lara McDonald when we had a bit of a chat about it. In terms of women, we've got so many different hormones that they're finding new ones all the time as well. You know, a new one comes out in a new paper that gets sent to me and I'm like, ah, fuck, there's another one. Okay, wonderful. But the main ones are estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Okay. Now, what happens is that you go through certain phases in your cycle, which is a follicular phase, a luteal phase, and I've forgotten the other one, but the other one, which I'll get, it's not that important. But basically, when you do have these peaks and troughs, you have a peak of progesterone, and that is the nasty little hormone that gives you all of the different cravings, the weaknesses and strengths, which can be that, right? I'm not saying that it affects everybody, because it doesn't. But it can give you some weaknesses in strength. It can give you some lethargy. It can make you want to divorce your husband, kick the dog, and, you know, everything else. But in terms of a nutrition plan that needs to change in accordance with those cycles, you don't necessarily need to do that. It depends on how bad your cravings are, how bad your side effects and symptoms are. I would actually say, rather than actually changing a nutritional approach when that occurs, I would change your training programming. That's probably better in the long run to have a better effect. What I do with the majority of my clients, not the ones who are on an exogenous hormone pill like you were talking about microgynon, because you do not have a period, you have a withdrawal bleed. So when you have a break, or when you actually do bleed even throughout taking the pill, some people don't have periods at all when they're on that mini pill. But when you do have it, it is not a true period, it is a withdrawal bleed. But for people who are not taking any kind of contraceptive whatsoever, I do monitor their periods from day one all the way through. Now, people will also say, oh yes, I'm a 28-day cycle girl. Okay, well, no, you're not, because cycles range from 20 days to 42 days. So all of these people who are like, you know, it's a 28-day cycle, it's just the fact that that is an average in between the two. That's the reason why the literature says 28 days. It is not 28 days. Anybody who has a specific 28-day cycle is like finding a unicorn in the woods. Yeah, it doesn't happen. But in terms of nutrition, I only actually have one client that I have to change the nutritional realms through, and it's just because cravings, irritability, weight fluctuations, everything like that happen. And, you know, she can gain about half a stone in that week where progesterone does spike, you know, which is like 7 pounds. It's a lot. And you can have a lot of water retention, and it can make you feel shitty, and it make you feel moody and all the rest of it, you know. So she's the only person who I do actually manipulate things, and with that I just lower protein and increase carbs and fats. That way I will be able to give more allowances for the foods that she does crave without sending her skyrocketing over. Sometimes I'll do more fats than carbs, so you don't have that water retention with the carbohydrate you're going to be taking on, especially if it is near and coming up to a weigh-in day or something like that, or competition. That's the biggest problem that I do have with some of my girls making weight in terms of being on their period. But touch wood, I've never had one miss out on weight yet. I'm always, never. I'm going to say that very, very proudly, because I've been doing this professionally for 4 years and I've never had one person not make weight. I'm very happy with that. But yeah, there have been some touch and goes every now and again, and it's just like, all right, you know what? You're going to have to do this and go for another pee, and you know, kind of thing. But there are ways and means that you can manage it very, very easily. But yeah, I would be more inclined to actually say concentrate on your training a little bit more from that, because nutritionally wise, it's not going to have that much of an impact.
Okie dokie. And then you mentioned in there how you might change around someone's carbs and fats and proteins with that, but also a couple of people have asked about carb cycling and how low, moderate and high days will help fuel training and aid fat loss.
It won't necessarily aid fat loss, because bottom line is you're still going to be eating the same amount of calories throughout a week if you were to have an isocaloric diet Monday through till Sunday, or if you were going to have 3,000 calories one day, 1,000 calories the next, and 2,000 calories the next. At the end of the day, it's all going to equate out to the same. So it doesn't necessarily help with fat loss. It will help with performance, because again, like we were talking about previously, it's all about fueling the work required. So if you are on a rest day and you're not realistically doing anything apart from juggling balls and spinning plates and stuff, you're not going to warrant a shit ton of carbohydrate, because you don't derive the energy for it. It can be better in terms of getting a higher fat source in. So if your fats are lower on a higher carbohydrate day, to balance out your calories, because protein should always be constant. Protein should always be the same. So what you could do is on a lower day or a moderate carb day, for example, I don't really get moderate carb days. It's like just go high or low. So you don't need moderate. But you can boost up fats, and that will give you more allowances for certain foods. So you can have salmon and avocados, and it's kind of nice to have those different tastes. Because the other thing that you've got to consider in this realm, sorry, I'm probably going off on a tangent at this point, is palate fatigue. So if you see all the bros, all the gym bros who go chicken and rice, chicken and rice, chicken and rice, right, how boring is it?
Cannot do.
It's exactly right. But it's not just mundane and boring for the brain. But the reason why it's boring and mundane for the brain is because your palate is not exposed to various different tastes. You know, your palate is meant to be exposed to various different things, because, you know, food is emotive and food is tasty and food should be beautiful like that. If you just give somebody a plain boiled chicken and rice and broccoli and stuff like that, your mouth is going to go, dude, what the fudge? You know? And that's what's going to cause all of these cravings. But that's the reason why bodybuilders and bros back in the day, who were doing the 8 meals of chicken and rice every day, then had an obscene cheat meal or cheat day on the Sunday, where they just packed themselves full of these calories because they wanted it, and it was all those cravings. And then, you know, weight spiked with all of the water, and then obviously came down again, and the whole vicious cycle somehow. So carb cycling would not realistically aid weight loss. A calorie deficit aids weight loss. That is basically what it is. But it can, if used in the correct manner, help with performance.
Cool. So we've got just a couple more. So someone asked the best foods pre and post workout, and then someone else said how important is nutrient timing for strength training, and I thought they tie in quite nicely together, and you alluded to some of it earlier, but if you could talk a bit more in depth about how important timing is and why it's so important.
Sure. So timing in essence does matter in terms of, again, fueling the work required. If you are going to be training 2 a days, which some strong people do, I'm not sexist. If strong women or strong men do train 2 a days, timing is ultimately really important. If you are just going to be doing some cardio or a little bit of conditioning, which isn't touching a barbell, you can do that fasted, especially, and I'm assuming if you're going to be doing it fasted, you're going to be doing it in the morning. The reason why that's okay is probably because you've had a shit ton of carbs the day before, and probably a little bowl of cereal with some yogurt and some fruit and stuff like that before you go to bed. So those carbohydrates and glucose are all going to be in your muscle cell and in your liver, so they'll be able to fuel that training very, very efficiently. Protein timing is the most important thing that you do have to consider realistically, especially pre and post workout. So pre-workout, you would always realistically need to have some an abundance of amino acids, right? So we go from a whole protein source that can be from what we like to call highly bioavailable, so or HBV protein. So that can come from anything like a meat protein, so chicken, fish, pork, whatever like that. I wouldn't realistically go with pork, but chicken, egg whites, whey, that kind of stuff. Or whey. Whey is absolutely brilliant. Again, you can have whatever you like with that, but get a good dose of between 25 and 30 grams of protein in. You don't need any more than that. Any more than that, it reaches a leucine threshold. You don't need to spike it anymore. That will allow you to reduce muscle protein breakdown. So that is basically you becoming, you atrophying your muscle. And that's not what you want to do as a strength athlete. You want to keep as much muscle as you can and grow it. Post-workout, as long as it is after or in between, 3 hours from between your pre-workout to your post-workout, then it is fine. You do not have to finish the last barbell curl in the squat rack and then run to your gym locker and get your protein shake. You will be fine. If you are fasted, then yes, get it in as soon as possible, realistically. But as long as you are post-workout and you get another good dose, you can have a slightly higher amount, so erring on the side of the 30 gram per protein at that dose post-workout, then again, absolutely, that is your imperative bit. Carbohydrates, even the smallest amount of carbohydrates, say like 10 to 15 grams, is going to help boost muscle protein synthesis. So after the breaking down of the muscle, you want to synthesize it to grow more muscle. Just including a small amount of carbohydrates just gives that MPS a little bit more of a higher bump. So that's when you're going to include your carbohydrates at that point. You want to be keeping fiber and fat low on that particular meal because it slows gastric digestion. So you want to be actually refilling up those carbohydrates as much as you can. Now, this is in the case of training 2-a-days, right? You want to be having a load of carbohydrates previously. Realistically, about 1 gram per kilo is more than enough for everybody or anybody who's going to be doing a 2-a-day session. So protein and 1 gram per kilo in terms of carbohydrate until you get into your second session of the day. If you're only training once a day, then it doesn't realistically matter that much the amount of carbohydrates that you're going to get in post-workout, but you still want to be able to refuel because otherwise you're going to feel like shit and you're going to feel fatigued.
Yeah.
The main aspects realistically for timing is type and total. So you don't want to be eating like an arsehole. You know, if you go, again, see, don't be an arsehole. If you go and have a big training session and then straight afterwards you go out and you have the most monstrous pizza and double burger and ice cream and stuff like that, you're going to feel bloated, you're going to feel lethargic, and you're going to feel like shit the next day. So make sure that 80 to 85 to even 90% of your intake is going to be nutritionally dense, wholesome foods. Mm-hmm. And then the remainder of it, you can sprinkle on over the top. But yeah, timing does matter. When it comes to fueling all of your performances, like coming up to competition and things, then yeah, timing does matter a hell of a lot more because we need to be so much more on it. And, you know, supplement timing does come into effect as well. So things like beta-alanine, things like creatine monohydrate, all of these things are going to be essential and quite imperative in terms of timing. So I mean, again, timing is, again, very, very different to each individual. It depends on what time you train in the daytime as to how you would actually put across or design your meal timing template. If you train late at night, then, you know, what are you going to do in terms of the remainder of your meals coming up to that one of an evening time? Again, it's very, very person specific and very individual. But yeah, don't just dismiss timing altogether. It does have its place.
Yeah, for sure. So last one, I think it's quite a good one to finish on, especially with people who maybe haven't worked with a nutrition coach before and have just winged it. Yeah. Are there any common mistakes that you often see strength athletes making with nutrition? I guess I bet strongman's such a big one. I know when people first start strongman, especially when you see like so many novice strongmen pack in so much food and put on so much weight and then go, oh, I didn't need to get this big. I see that a lot. How about you?
Yeah, so that's one of the first things. I have to eat all of the food. Right, that's the thing with strong men. Yeah, strong men just think they need to eat all of the food in order to be in a surplus, right? You are not going to do yourself any favors by doing that. You're just going to get fat. And you have to have some conditioning in your system. If you are a big, huge guy carrying too much body fat, you are not going to push a truck. And, you know, you're not going to run with a yoke and that kind of thing. You're just not going to look impressive out on the field, are you? So yeah, that's one of the biggest things, is eating too much food. A big thing in terms of women not eating enough carbohydrates. They're carbohydrate phobic. I mean, girls, I'm not being funny. Eat carbs. Carbs are yummy. Carbs combined with fat are even better, you know, and carbs fuel your performance. It is the most readily available source of energy that you can get. So don't be afraid of eating carbohydrates.
And they're yummy.
And they're amazing. They're amazing. Think yourself lucky that you are not celiac, because I only have a very, very small amount of carbohydrates that I can have from my pool, and I just have to eat loads of it. Yeah. So yeah, that's the other one, being completely carbophobic. Another one is relying too much on supplements. I will use very, very, very little amounts of supplementation. Reason being is, one, the majority of them are unnecessary. Yeah. So a lot of the supplement companies out there do peddle a lot of supplements that are not necessary. You know, they can be very good, they can be excellent to add into your arsenal, you know, but they are not necessary. Two, very expensive, very, very expensive, you know. And if you do start with one, the majority of people say you can do it all year round and you've got to do that. You don't necessarily need to do that. So you can periodize your supplementations, again, depending on what your goals are and what you're going to reach towards and that kind of thing, and depending on times of the year. So vitamin D, for example, I would always advise everybody to take that between the autumn and the winter months, because everyone's going to be vitamin D deficient, because we don't have a lot of sun. But in the summer months, well, I don't know, depends on where you live, but you can obviously be exposed to sunlight and get yourself out into the daylight. It has a lot of things. You don't need to supplement with vitamin D. So that's one of the other things. I think a lot of people are inbuilt into this supplement culture, because it is big out there, you know, and it's quite indoctrinating as well, isn't it? If you look out on social media, this new supplement does this new supplement does that, and the dosings are always wrong, you know, and it's just like, oh, for God's sake. So I'll only recommend certain supplements that are going to be completely essential, and then I will advise on different supplements that can help. So things like if you've got lazy bowels or whatever like that, you know, there's a little supplement that you can put in there. But yeah, there's too much reliance on supplements in terms of strongman and women, and you lose the whole food first approach. And if I can make you so much stronger by actually eating, it's going to save you money. Imagine if you run out of something, you know, I can just say, well, go to the shop and buy more. Yeah. Whereas if run out of a supplement and that's what you're really relying on, you're going to have to order it, you're going to have to wait for it to get delivered, you know, or you're going to have it on a monthly subscription, then you might be oversupplied, you know, and that kind of thing. So that's the other thing. And the very, very last thing, what was that last one that I was going to say? I would actually just kind of say, like, being afraid of not sticking to the plan. Mm-hmm. That's another big thing. It's actual fear. And it's like, there's a big thing with nutritionists, and I totally get it. The amount of people that I've spoken to over the years who have come to me and said, well, my last nutritionist did this, and I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, you know. And it's exactly what we were talking about before, putting them into a massive calorie deficit and then expecting them to still perform optimally. Mm-hmm. And then I have to spend 6 months literally fixing them before I can even say, right, well, this is what we're going to do in order to maximize your performance, because I can't, you know, I have to do that. So, but at that point, people then get scared. They then get this fear, because the way that I do things is very, very different. You know, I will be on your arse and I will be saying, right, what have you had today? What's this? What's that? You know, and all the rest of it. You've been quiet on me and you haven't checked in. What are you doing? You know, is that kind of stuff. And they get scared, and they get scared of not following the plan. It's not because I'm an ogre, because I'm not. I just want you to do really well and maximize your performance. Mm-hmm. So it's about creating that relationship and having that, that mentality to accept a new relationship in terms of a nutrition plan, because it's important that, you know, you find that rapport. And And I suppose, I mean, it's not really a big thing, but I suppose that's what I can leave my little bit of advice on is if you want to have a nutritionist, you have got to find the one that you really connect with and you build that rapport with.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then the plan is not going to work for you. It really isn't. You need to have somebody that you can rely on, because realistically, your nutritionist is responsible for your health.
Yeah.
You know, they really are. They're telling you what to eat. They're telling you when to eat it, and realistically, sometimes how to eat it, you know. And they are responsible for your health. So you've really got to do your research, and please be careful of the people who say, yeah, I'm a nutritionist, and they have a Groupon fucking certificate on their bedroom wall. You know, it's just like, yeah, anybody can read about nutrition. Absolutely. Anybody can read about nutrition, but they should not be caught, or anybody can't be a nutritionist that is responsible for your health, your performance, your livelihood.
Mm-hmm. And I think on that note as well, it's something that I always say to people. I know so many people who have coaches both for their training and for their nutrition, and they're like moaning about it constantly and don't say anything. I think as an athlete, it's really important that if you're not happy with what's being done, say something. If you're finding something really difficult, don't just not do it and ignore it, or keep doing it and not enjoy it. Like, say what the problem is, and they might be able to give you justification for why you're doing that, which might give you a bit more motivation to do it. Or you might be able to switch things up to make things easier, or to make things better, or to work better for you more. So I think that's really important as well from like an athlete perspective. Don't just kind of sit in silence and go along with things if you don't think that they're right for you. So it's that,
no, definitely,
isn't it?
Ask the question. You should be able to ask your coach anything, you know, and they should be able to give you an answer to it. Prime example is you yeah, I knew you were like, yeah, I knew you'd bring this up, you bitch. But no, in all fairness, you followed everything to a T. And then it came to the point where you were just like, I really do think I need more food. It's in my opinion that I need to eat more food in order to maximize strength, and really threw your dummy out of the pram, and then put in brackets, I really hope that that's not too rude, which I did laugh. But I gave you all of the reasonings as to why I was doing things in a certain manner. Yeah. I did increase your food. Your weight did exactly what I told you it was going to do. And then I told you in 3 days it's going to do this. And you were like, what the fuck? You're a wizard, Harry. Because this is exactly the point. But it was good that you did that. And even though afterwards you apologized and you were like, I really didn't mean to sound like a bitch. I was like, no, I want you to ask these questions. Yeah. If you feel like I am not pushing you hard enough at this point, then great. You know, I want you to tell me this, because it makes me learn how your body reacts as well, and what you're doing mentally and emotionally. Yeah. You know, you were hungry. You did an extra training day just to be on training day calories. You remember that? And I was like, okay, Chloe, no, we're not going to be doing that, because then you're overtraining and you're just like fucking up everything. So don't do that. So, but that's the reason why we obviously change things. But if you do not talk to your coach does not have a crystal ball. No matter how bloody good they are, they need to understand where your mentality is coming from. And if you are having a shit day, tell them you're having a shit day. Yeah. Don't just sit there and down a bottle of fucking whiskey and then say that you stuck to the plan. Because guess what, mofo? You haven't. Yeah. That's me.
Excellent. I think that's a good, excellent note to finish on. So just before we go, tell us a little bit about your challenge that you are doing for all of the...
Oh, God. For all of the shizzle.
And all of the charity and
so... Because I was supposed to be competing at the Worlds for the World's Bench Press, right? And I was really excited. It was like going to be my first Worlds competition for the bench press. And COVID happened. Bastard COVID. So we weren't doing that. I have a gym in my garage, so I needed something to do, and I was seeing everything that was going on in the NHS, and I thought, right, I'm going to do something for charity, so I'll do something insane. I am not an endurance athlete by any stretch of the imagination at all. I told you before, I'm not a competing 3-lift powerlifter, so I thought, fuck it, I'll just combine the 3 or combine the 2. So what I'm going to do is, in the morning, I'm going to do a full powerlifting meet, which includes a squat, a bench, and a deadlift. I'm going to aim to PB my bench, which is going to be anything more than 72.5 kilos, and then just basically hope and wish for the best on the squat and the deadlift to make sure that die. That's going to be invigilated by a powerlifting coach via the whole Skype job. And then later on in the afternoon, I'm going to take that complete powerlifting total in kilos, turn it into pounds, and then multiply that total by 100. That will give me a distance in meters that I will need to row later on in the afternoon on my rower, which basically means that I could be on the rower for more than 7 hours.
Ridiculous.
So, yeah.
I think it's going to be pretty amazing. I mean, watching your training for it is blowing my mind. I think that's impressive. So on the day, I think it'll be incredible, and I wish you the very best of luck with it.
Thank you. I just hope I don't die. That's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to get a t-shirt saying, but I didn't die. That's all.
And send me a link, and I will put where people can donate in the
comment box.
Yeah, so people can head there and support you, because I think it's a great cause.
Wicked. Thank you very much.
Awesome. So on that note, I will leave you to enjoy the rest of your day.
Wonderful. Sun's out, guns out. Yeah, buddy.
So there we go. I hope that you found that informative and helpful. Maybe drop a comment below with what you found most interesting or useful. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share. And I'll see you again soon.